What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and for those that already don't know, you already know that I started this year, well, somewhat this year on a new foot. And that being said, if you remember my last video of 2025, it was ranking all the grass type starters of the Pokemon franchise, from least favorite to favorite. Now, I'm back at it again, but this time, we're taking a look at one of the most notable ones that everyone tends to put stock in, the fire type starter. Whether you subscribe to the Zodiac theory, or you have a bit of a hatred for fire fighting type starters. Either way, I'm taking a look at my favorite fire type starters from least favorite to most favorite. And this is my opinion. You're all privy to your opinions, but just let me have mine. And without further ado, this is my ranking. Let's rank every fire type starter from least favorite to favorite. Also, if you hear some raspiness, I'm kind of dealing with a bit of laryngitis, so yeah. Well, at least I'm trying to prevent it from, keep it from messing up my video, so yeah, that's why. Without further ado, let's get started. Starting off first at number 9, we have the Score Bunny line. Alright, I'm gonna have to say this every time. Just because it's at the lower end of this list does not mean I hate it. In fact, when it comes down to the Galar starters, I actually like all of the Galars. All of them. Which really says a lot considering how solid Grookey is. That being said, Score Bunny considering how Sword and Shield was the first Pokemon games I ever bought on release day, yeah, it really does say a lot. But that being said, why I like these starters, or most of Galar's decks. That being said, oh boy. Even with that, Score Bunny is a pretty solid Pokemon overall, was basically a rabbit. And it's a soccer playing rabbit, so it honestly has that cool factor to it. I mean, granted, it looks like someone slapped a slice of Kraft singles onto its nose, but that's neither here nor there. And even with that, having it evolve into Raboot, which is basically your emo, soccer-playing ninja rabbit, basically kind of like a combination of Inazuma 11 and Naruto, and then with Cinderace turning into a full-on striker bunny, really does say, which changed the game with its Libero ability and its signature move Court Change, really does say a lot. The reason why it's at the lowest, it's at the number 9 spot, I have not used Score Bunny that much in a Galar playthrough as a starter, which is especially really telling once you consider that I more or less have used Grookey or Sobble in most of my recent playthroughs. Again, if I do end up using Score Bunny, there's a possibility it would be higher, but for now, it's at the lower end of this list. That's just my opinion. Moving on next at number 8, we have the Torchic line. Alright. we're moving on from the soccer playing rabbit to the kickin' chicken itself. And honestly, like always, as I said, Generation 3 was a it was a very hard time for me in my life. But even with that, the Torchic line looked pretty awesome, as it was a solid member of May's team in the anime. It basically looked really adorable as Torchic, just basically being this scrappy little chick. And Blaziken looked to be the most badass fighting rooster that we've ever seen. I mean, even when it made its first appearance in the Johto anime as the ace of Harrison, oh man, I was hyped. And I know everyone else was as well. Granted, while it did essentially continue the trend of firefighting types, it's really not something that everyone else would hate. Granted, it does have its own popularity, but yeah. Especially considering speed boost, but I've not been lucky to have a speed boost Blaziken outside of its mega form. So, yeah, I really don't get the competitive aspects of it. And I'm not a competitive person at all. The only reason why the Torchic line is, again, this low is because of Combuskin. Yup, the curse of the awkward middle evolution strikes again. And, I think we all know why Combuskin is so awkward. And it's based on a certain thing that I can't mention without getting demonetized by YouTube. So, I'm just gonna leave it alone and move on. Moving on next at number 7, we have the Litten line. Okay. Yeah. Surprisingly enough, as you already know, I love cats. And naturally, it's fair to say that whenever they make a cat starter, you know they are cooking with it. As the Sprigatito line was pretty solid in terms of grass starter lines. But that being said, I think they were just adding more fuel to the fire that was essentially kindled and stoked with the Litten line. As basically, in its base form, Litten's just an aloof kitten who doesn't look like it cares all too much, but basically kind of like any other cat. Basically like any other cat. Well, if anyone out there has a cat, please tell me what their cat is like during most of the day. Because honestly, I'm sure one of you has a cat that's basically like Litten. But then again, Torracat and Incineroar go even further, as Torracat not only gets bigger, but it gains access to a bell that it utilizes to amp up its fire-type moves. Which, oh my god, that is awesome. And while a lot of people wanted the final Incineroar to basically be just a saber-toothed tiger, the fact Incineroar is basically like a fire dark type heel wrestler is just, holy crap, that's one of the most awesome things I've ever seen. And naturally, we already have the likes of Halucha, which is a masked wrestler, and Hariyama, which is a sumo wrestler, so a heel wrestler Tiger really is one of the most awesome things that's ever seen. Also fits the 3 pillars of wrestling: Japanese sumo wrestling, Mexican masked wrestling, and American pro wrestling. Additionally, that being said, it's this low on the list because, honestly, whenever I go back to Alola, I always choose Rowlet. Yeah. Why choose a cat when you got a round ball of goober just waiting for you? Oh, jeez. There it is. Moving on next at number 6, we have the Tepig line. Yeah, I know everyone are going to rally against me or rail against me for putting Tepig higher than they'd normally like. And I get this. In fact, when it comes down to it, when Generation 5 came out, Tepig was one of those Pokemon that many people kind of had an issue with. And honestly, it was not the first, because there were a lot of others that a lot of people tended to hate, like the Vanillux and Garbodor lines, just for being based on objects, or like the Roggenrola, Drillbur, or Timpole lines for just being rehashes of Gen 1 Pokemon. But even with that being said, I really do like this little porker. And considering how I am not a big fan of the Snivy line, yeah, the Tepig line's one of those that I really love. And heck, even with Pignite and Emboar being just looking like they're wearing wrestling singlets, and yeah, I know, I mentioned the 3 pillars of wrestling, but honestly, more often than not, a lot of people tend to think about pro wrestling rather than Greco-Roman wrestling, to the point that they consider pro wrestling as real wrestling. I swear, we're living in an idiocracy more and more each day. But that being said, even with that, a lot of people tend to hate it because it's yet another firefighting type. And honestly, I have to say, so what? It followed the same sort of idea as the previous gen's firefighting type starter. I'll get to that soon enough. Since it's based on Zuba-G from Journey to the West, which really looks pretty awesome. And the fact that it made a return in Legend ZA as one of the starters who got a Mega Evolution, honestly, it's kind of amazing. The problem is the Mega Evolution kinda is not one of my favorites. I mean, seriously, a Fire Spear? Seriously, you have the Fire Beard. I mean, could have done more with that, or maybe could have done like a cooking cuisine style to fit more with the French inspiration. Like, seriously, you're in France. Could have made it like an oven chef Pokemon. But then again, I may be reaching just a little bit. It's my opinion. This will be continued in part 2.